I'm Amy Mahaly with Be Well Clinic, and today I want to talk to you about introducing dairy after you've been reacting to it. We recommend using what's called the Dairy Introduction Protocol or the Dairy Introduction Schedule. This is found in the GAPS Healing Protocol, or also called the GAPS Diet. And let's talk about what that looks like, why we do it that way, so that you can apply it to yourself or your child as you are beginning to introduce dairy. So the Dairy Introduction Protocol can be found in the Yellow Book or in the Blue Book. In the Yellow Book, it's found on page 124. In the Blue Book, it is found on page 179. This will describe in more detail what we're talking about, and it's really helpful to understand what you're doing and what the timeline is, but we're going to briefly talk about that today. The other resource I want to talk to you about is the Complete Cooking Techniques of the GAPS Diet, published by Chef Monica Corrado. This is an amazing resource, not just for dairy, but for the other 4 pillars of the GAPS diet and learning how to cook those. And on page 80 of this second edition that I have, this is going to tell you not only about the stages and what we're doing at each stage of the dairy introduction protocol, but why we're doing it. One of the main reasons why we are introducing dairy in this order is because Dr. Natasha took dairy in its easiest to digest and absorb to the most difficult to digest and absorb, and we are introducing from easiest to hardest. This has to do with the size of the molecule. Yes, milk matters, like A1 versus A2 milk, but it's also how well it's broken down. When we break down dairy, we are going to have more probiotic foods in it, which can cause die-off. So then we add those in a certain order to prevent a lot of die-off symptoms, because although we know we have to go through die-off to some degree to get good microbes established in our body, we don't want to overwhelm the body with them. So it is a stepping stones that actually works really well when we're wanting to introduce dairy. I've also found people who are not following the GAPS protocol find that they can introduce dairy in their lives up to a certain point, and at least they can have ghee or ghee and butter or ghee and butter and cream, because they follow this protocol from easiest to digest to most difficult to digest. And until they do more gut healing, maybe they can't move beyond it, but at least they can get the nutrition from those early, easy to digest foods and still have them in their life even before they go through the healing of the GAPS protocol. So the first thing we do with the dairy introduction protocol is actually remove all dairy for 4 to 6 weeks. This allows the body and the immune system, microbes that have maybe been feasting on that dairy, but that we don't really want around in the great numbers that they've been, they can all get reduced, balanced, reset. Then after 4 to 6 weeks of no dairy, then we start introducing the first step, which is ghee. Ghee is milk fat made into butter that has been clarified. So there is absolutely no protein left in this milk fat. Butter has trace amounts of milk protein in it. If you ever heat butter and you get the little white sediment, that's milk protein. So butter is largely a milk fat, but there is some milk protein in it, and that milk protein can be something that you're reacting to. Ghee, for 95% or more of people, is not going to be reacted to because there is no protein in it to react to. Once you have been eating ghee for 6 to 12 weeks and you're sure that your body is tolerating it well, we can move to the next step of the dairy introduction schedule. This step is to add homemade cultured butter from grass-fed cows. This is often necessary for people, especially if you're very sensitive to dairy before you started the GAPS protocol. Some people find that they actually can purchase cultured butter or even switch from ghee to organic butter. The thing that you want to watch for here is that there are some milk solids in that butter. Some people find they really have trouble with those little bit of leftover milk proteins, either because they're reacting in an allergic way or because those milk proteins can feed certain bacteria and cause casomorphines to be formed, which do affect the opiate system of our body, so we get symptoms from the bacteria off-gassing after eating the dairy. If you are seeing no symptoms and you are on cultured butter or even regular organic butter, it's time to move on to the next stage of the dairy introduction protocol. After you've been tolerating butter and ghee well, and the butter has been tolerated for at least 6 weeks, it's time to move on to creme fraiche or GAP sour cream. These are 2 names for the exact same thing. Creme fraiche, which technically is cream that has been cultured, is really what we're looking for, but Dr. Natasha often refers to it in the GAPS books as sour cream, so we clarify by calling it GAP sour cream, denoting that we are culturing cream with microbes, instead of other ways, including adding thickeners that culture can make a sour cream that you can purchase at the store. With creme fraiche or sour cream, you want to culture it for at least 24 hours. We can also eventually do something called kefir cream or kefir cream, and instead of using a yogurt or sour cream culture to culture the cream, we use kefir strains to culture the cream. After you've been tolerating this for 6 weeks or more, it's time to move on to the next stage. The next stage is homemade cultured yogurt. We need to culture our yogurt at home at the beginning, especially because we need to make sure we get at least a 24-hour ferment. After 24 hours, basically all of the lactose and most of the casein has been broken down, so you no longer have that casomorphine production. You don't really have a lactose available as a sugar to feed bacteria because it's already been broken down and ready to absorb into the body. And we also don't have as much of an allergic potential because the casein, which is what a lot of people are reacting to, has been broken down. The longer you culture your yogurt, the less reactions you're going to have in terms of an allergy, but you may have more die-off because longer culture has more bacteria. We want to be at least 24-hour culture for our yogurt. However, some people culture as long as 72 hours because that's how much they need to break down that milk protein to make it digestible for them. Why do we spend all the time doing this? Because the nutrition in dairy is amazing. It gives us so many good nutrients. It's such an easy food source. And we want to get as much real food into our lives. That is a huge goal of GAPS, is to bring freedom of food, not limitation of food. So we want to do that cultured dairy, and eventually you'll find you'll be able to eat store-bought yogurt, especially ones that are cultured for 24 hours, which are sometimes possible to buy. Or you can do tricks like taking yogurt from the store that's just milk and cultures and culturing it longer once you bring it home. So there's little tricks you can do about that. But let's stay on track and go to the next part of the dairy introduction schedule, which is homemade kefir or kefir, or some people even say kefir. Kefir is the technical word as it comes from the Russian, and kefir is this beautiful culture, which is primarily yeast strains, beneficial yeast strains, as opposed to yogurt, which is primarily bacterial strains. This means your body is going to react very differently than it did to the bacteria. It may be easier or harder for it to integrate into your microbiome. But the really cool thing about kefir, and why we always want to get to this as soon as possible, is that because kefir is primarily yeast strains, it is going to crowd out the abnormal strains of Candida, but it's also going to bring a residence of microbes to our body. A lot of the probiotics we eat are actually called transitory probiotics. They do important jobs, but they do them while they're going through our bodies. There's not a lot of residence that happen when we eat sauerkraut, for example. A lot of the work in sauerkraut is being done as it's going through your body. Kefir is different. Those yeast strains can take up residence and they can bring balance to your whole microbiome, not just the Candida, not just helping you digest milk better for the rest of your life, which is an added benefit, but they're also going to bring balance to the immune system, tell the immune system how to interact with microbes, and bring balance to the entire microbial community. So it is so great to get to the kefir. You can also do kefir in different ways, not just straight, but you can use kefir whey in different ferments like the vegetable medley ferment. But that is the next stage of the dairy introduction protocol. It is not actually more difficult to digest in terms of proteins. The reason why we wait so long for the kefir is because we need to get some microbe resilience built up so that we're ready to introduce the powerful kefir strains. After you're tolerating the yogurt and the kefir, you can actually start doing something called homemade cottage cheese or GAPS cottage cheese or farmer's cheese. There's different names for it. But basically you're taking yogurt or kefir and you are draining it, dripping the whey, collect the whey, you can use that. And then you're left with a more solid substance, a little more dry. This is a great thing to be crumbling, using on salads or on dishes. You can also use this as a cream cheese. I actually have some recipes, which I'll link below, where I use it inside some meat and roll up the meat and tie it and bake it that way, which makes it a very delicious dish. The last official stage of the dairy introduction protocol is introducing cheese. You want to start with cheeses that are hard and have been cultured for a long time, so 6 months or more. Parmesan cheese, for example, would be the first one to introduce. If you're tolerating that, you can go on to things like cheddar. It's going to probably take a very long time before you're able to do soft cheeses like brie or mozzarella because they really aren't cultured very long. They're not cultured often with cultures. They're cultured with acid or other techniques and don't have that bacteria to eat the milk for you. The final thing in our dairy introduction schedule is seeing how much you can tolerate commercially made dairy foods. So this is getting cheeses that maybe aren't from raw dairy made on a farm, even if you don't make it, and you might be able to find a raw cheese in the store or maybe even a not raw cheese, and you can tolerate that. You also may start being able to tolerate yogurt that is commercially made, as we were saying before, maybe some sour cream that's just cultures in cream, but maybe it hasn't been cultured for 24 hours, but you're starting to tolerate it with a little less culturing. You always can culture things well. You always can do things more or better, but it can be helpful to have some commercially available products that you can tolerate, and it also shows the strength of your digestive system that you are able to tolerate those foods. I hope this helps. You can always refer to your book, either the yellow book or the blue book, or the complete cooking techniques of the GAPS diet. If you have questions, make sure to post them in the comments below. And if you want to work with us individually, you can head over to our website, bewellclinic.net/GAPS, GAPS, and you can check out all the information we have, which includes the dairy introduction protocol written out for you, and recipe links for the things that you need to do for that, and information and recipes about the other stages, and learning how you can work with us for individualized care and support. So head over there if you are not already working with a practitioner and you feel like you need one. We would be happy to help you. That's all for our video today. If you like this video, please subscribe so you can see more content like this, and I will see you in the next video.